Welcome, travelers, to the Sins of Redemption RPG development playlist. My name is Eric, the creator and developer of Sins of Redemption, and today's question is, why play a pen and paper role-playing game in an age of massive multiplayer online games? I want you to imagine this scene. You and your 3 friends come to the basement door. The house is eerily silent and has been so since the disappearance of the utility employee sent to look at the fuse box some 2 days ago. His truck is still parked by the side of the house. The driver door is open and the keys are in the ignition. It has long since run out of gas. Clearly, the worker was expecting this to be a quick job. You look at one another and ask yourselves, was this really a good idea? One of you looks at the light switch on the wall. Maybe. You flick it on, but the darkness beyond the old creaking wooden staircase leading down to the stone-walled basement persists. Of course, it wouldn't work. The worker had never finished the task he was sent to complete. Now, your team of 4 investigators have been charged with revealing whether or not the disappearance and odd events surrounding the old Moore home were paranormal or simply abnormal. You turn on your flashlights and body cameras. The panoply of sensor equipment you brought register nothing. The silence is overwhelming. Even your breath seems suspended in time. The first of your team places a foot on the first step, and the board lets out a creaking whine, which in return is responded to by a cold blast of air and a rasping moan emanating from the darkness beyond the stairs. The sensors burst alive with readings. This is anything but an abnormal event. What do you do? What you just heard was a rough narration of the very first scene setting for my group of players as we embarked on an evening of playing Palladium's Beyond the Supernatural. This was a few years back, by the way. What is this recording about? Well, in this episode, we're going to talk about all the things a pen and paper or tabletop RPG can teach you about yourself. I want you to imagine the same scene I just narrated, but as an MMO. Same music, everything. Ready? Cue music. Right shift to open tree skill. Use listen skill. Pan mouse to right. Right click to use wall switch. Pan mouse to stairs. W key to walk. Stop. Tree skill. Use L for listen. Cool, there's something down there. Let's attack. Shift W to rush down into the basement. A little underwhelming, isn't it? Yeah. MMOs are a great source of escapism, but there are massive drawbacks to them. In all honesty, they are designed to give you that dopamine release and keep you addicted and logged on. But beyond that, there isn't much else to them. Well, except for those beautiful Korean MMO graphics. Damn you Korean MMO developers. Damn you all. Personally, I remember the first time my mom found out that I played Dungeons & Dragons. Now, she's a pretty open-minded person, but she had some serious questions about how bad this could be for me. So I invited her to sit in on a session with me and my friends. By the next session, she had made a cleric character, and by the 3rd session, she had joined our campaign. So the point is, she saw value in it. She saw it required communication skills, math, problem solving. It offered an outlet for an otherwise awkward and shy kid, myself, to expand. Plus, I think she really loved the idea of the fiction of having powers to be able to help others. Some years later, I was working in a government position for post-secondary learning, as a facilitator. And my coordinating manager asked me where I learned all my organizational and planning and critical thinking skills. And after a few seconds of thought, I had to tell her that I learned it from playing Dungeons and Dragons. Of course, she didn't believe me at first. She was expecting me to say that I took them online at some university or something. But as I explained it to her, she began to see the merit in it as well. That's when I realized that all those late evenings with my friends, sitting around a table with snacks and piles of dice and character sheets, those evenings hadn't just been entertainment. I was learning about myself and the skills that I had that I could develop. I was becoming more confident. And my friends, they were doing the same. Let's take a little step back here for a second and let's look at a little history. Tabletop pen and paper dice role-playing games started roughly back in the 70s with Dungeons and Dragons, released almost 50 years ago now. At the height of RPG fanfare, that was back in the 80s and 90s. That's when it really peaked. So tabletop RPGs are, well, kind of dated. Now, today, when you talk about RPGs, most people assume you're talking about online MMOs like Lord of the Rings Online or World of Warcraft or Black Desert Online. There are similarities, of course. Both offer the player the opportunity to create a fictional character, to immerse themselves into a fantasy or otherwise fictional world of their choosing. It allows them to do things they would never be able to do in reality. Both are meant to entertain and both require a substantial amount of time investment when it comes to playing. But that's really where the similarities start to diverge. Now, you might ask yourself, why a role-playing game? What can a pen and paper RPG teach you that most MMOs can't? Well, let's take a look at the skills. So let's start off with communication skills, and I'm talking about face-to-face communication skills. Anyone can yell at someone else over the internet and then rage quit, and there are plenty of people who do. And when you are sitting at a table, though, you're forced to resolve the issue with the person you're facing. At least you do if you want to keep playing with that group. In an MMO, you just quit. You quit the conversation, the party, the guild, or even the server and hop to the next one. MMOs emphasize that quitting before even trying to resolve the issue is a perfectly acceptable route. I think that everyone should be required to play a tabletop RPG just to gain the communication skills necessary to apply them to real-life conflict resolution. On top of that, in a pen and paper RPG, you need to describe everything. Everything. Your movements, your actions, your intentions, all of it, which in turn forces you to develop vocabulary and oratory skills. The only vocabulary really you need in MMO is WASD and FY. It's true. Let's talk about organization now. If you're not organized in a pen and paper game, you're as good as dead, and you'll probably be dragging down a couple of party members with you. Unless, of course, you have an incredibly lenient dungeon master. Rope? You didn't buy any rope. But look, there's 100 feet of pristine silk rope just sitting by the edge of that cliff. What luck. Yeah, that never really happens. As any tabletop RPG gamer will tell you, they spend as much time preparing to raid a dungeon as they actually do the act of raiding the dungeon. You are going to have to improvise, haggle, deal, and somehow store and carry all that equipment. Yeah, that limitless inventory you have in your MMO, that doesn't really exist in tabletop games. I remember the first time I dropped a whole stone cooking stove into my MMO character's inventory because for some reason my horse couldn't carry it. And then I realized I had enough room capacity to bring the entire rest of my furniture set. By the way, my horse couldn't carry that weight, but it could carry me while I carried that weight. And I could carry more weight than a horse. Yeah, that's not really logical, and yes, I'm looking at you, Black Desert Online. The point is, Tabletop RPGs force you to do the planning and make the calculated decisions based on cost, weight, and usefulness ratios, which to me should be part of everyday common sense. You buy a car, you're a young adult, you're single with limited budget. Do you really need that overpriced gas-guzzling 8-seater SUV? Do you? Another skill you're going to be developing is social interaction and group cohesion. What I've always found hilarious regarding most massive multiplayer online games is that they are, in effect, designed so that players can solo almost everything except the parts that require large groups. There's almost no incentive to party up in most games. People join guilds just to get the advantage of being in a guild. They don't do it because the game absolutely requires you to. You can play, I would say, almost every MMO. For the majority of the game, you'll be playing alone, surrounded by hundreds, maybe even thousands of other players who you will never even talk to. Sitting around a table with a group of friends, experiencing the same challenges and finding solutions together, that touches on the basic human experience. It's primordial. It's human. The group cohesion has to take place because the success of the group depends on the communication and interaction of all the players. The cohesion, and dare I even say the trust that develops, is important to the positive resolution to the problem at hand. You're building team cohesion, people, and that is a critical skill in today's world. We need that. Another skill you're going to see a lot of is problem solving. The only MMO game I have ever felt was a good template for developing problem solving skills was The Secret World, the first version. The second version was so dumbed down that you had all your choices made for you. In the original release of the game, you had to plan your skills and abilities to complement those of your team. Very little of the game was solo material. You had to discover how to develop items through trial and error, and you had to look for clues, actually look for them, and solve problems with logic, skills, and knowledge just to find the solutions. Even getting quests was part and parcel of that. Now, MMOs just stick a whopping exclamation mark over the NPC's head, and you literally follow the arrows to the next clue and look at the pop-up menu whenever you get lost. If I wanted procedural hand-holding, I'd get a to do it. Oh, come on, this is an adult content, people, stop. Where's the mystery? Where's the adventure? The reward? If you're going to be playing to have everything handed to you on a silver platter, what's the point? In the end, I usually just wind up farming mats or procedural processing in most MMOs because really, that's it. A tabletop RPG has no wiki solutions. It has no yellow exclamation marks indicating the quest giver. It's story driven, and the players have to engage in thinking and problem solving to even start the story. It's part and parcel of the tabletop experience, and a good DM or storyteller or a game master will make that experience feel incredibly immersive, giving players multiple choices, infinite possibilities, and most important of all, consequences to their actions. One of the biggest issues I have with MMOs is the lack of consequence. Oh, you butchered all the NPCs in the village? No problem, they'll just respawn soon, and you can work off that negative reputation or karma by killing a few rats in the barn. A tabletop version of that would be more like, the villagers rise up, burn him, and the DM tells you, well, now your character is hated throughout the land, the king has signed a death warrant for you, and the bounty on your head is worth a small fiefdom, and you are now known as the Butcher of Basharal. What do you do next? Nothing. Another skill that you do a lot of in pen and paper RPGs is math. Let me know if you remember this term. THACO. Yeah. If I had known how much math I was going to be doing in Dungeons & Dragons, I may not have started playing. But I may have learned more about addition, subtraction, fraction, decimals, multipliers, dividers, in playing pen and paper RPGs than I did in some of my math classes. I certainly learned more about their application as opposed to rote memorization. What math are you learning in MMOs? None whatsoever. Not really. Actually, I've witnessed a group of players, 6 players. Maximum party number is 5, and the 6th player couldn't figure out why he couldn't join. There's 5 of them, plus you. 5 plus 1. 5 plus 1. 6. Yes. Why can't you join the party? Creative thinking. Creative thinking and imagination development. Here's the biggest difference between tabletops and MMOs. The entirety of the MMO world is based on offering the most engaging visual immersion as possible. That's it. That's all of it. You are literally presented with what they want you to see, and your mind only has that one option. From that point on, the endorphin release becomes the only reason to play. In a tabletop RPG, you are forced to imagine what is described to you. It's very much like reading a book, and you will develop a very personal imagery according to your own experiences, according to your knowledges, according to your references. It forces your brain to think, recollect, and extrapolate. You're asked to construct something in your mind and then interact with that imaginary construct. There are whole areas of your brain that are engaged, and don't even get me started on the neuroplasticity of it. There is so much going on in the brain that when you are role-playing a game, especially if you add props, music, and ambiance, that your mind explodes with creative process. You become like an artist, working on an invisible canvas of the mind. And the best part is, each one of your works is a masterpiece. I know, it sounds like I'm harping on MMOs. And this may sound more like a rant than an affirmation of the values of playing tabletop pen and paper RPGs. But the truth is, unless you try a tabletop RPG with a group of friends, you don't understand any of this. And that's fine. MMOs are fine. They are. There's an entire industry of games out there that proves that they are very much enjoyable. I play MMOs occasionally. Hell, there is even an international competition league for some of them. But what a tabletop role-playing game offers you goes deeper than just the superficial pixelation and the exponentially challenging endorphin release that MMO games offer. It offers you the time and the opportunity to develop skill sets in a safe environment with people you like hanging around with in a fashion that is engaging and enjoyable. You're developing confidence, trust, skills, and friendship. And for me, those friendships have lasted decades now. So back to the question. Why play a pen and paper role-playing game in an age of massive multiplayer online games? Because we need it. We do. We need to wake up those parts of our minds that have been lulled into submissive slumber by this constant flux of 2D media. We need to get our minds to start thinking in 3 and 4D again. We need more imagination in the development of our society. We need to reawaken the storytellers of the world so that they can take us on journeys to the incredible and tell us that it's okay to dream. We need to let the child in all of us take hold of us now and again and go on a never-ending story. There are people out there who need to know that they can do the things everyone else does, that they have the skills, they just need to build the confidence and practice with friends that are there for them. They need to know that they belong somewheres and that it's okay to be a dreamer. That daydreaming and using your imagination are things that are important as any other skill set. All right, Wanderers, thanks for listening. Our next video look at the actual concept behind Sins of Redemption and how that RPG spawned a novel series, 5 novellas, an encyclopedia, and everything else that comes with it. If you enjoyed this or any of our videos, give us a like and a subscribe. Leave us your comments, your ideas, your suggestions, and critiques. They are always greatly, greatly appreciated. Bye for now. Thaco, what's a Thaco? 2-hit armor class 0. That's a thing?